this event comes out of the journal special issue that we published recently, the special issue of Education in the North, with many fine articles, I think, about conventions and also some features which are shorter pieces with a more of a practical focus. And I'm delighted that so many of the contributors are here this evening. And this is also a bit of a foreshadowing of the forthcoming Dorothy Hetkett Now conference, because this journal issue actually came out of last year's conference when we were in Aberdeen, and the focus was on conventions, drama conventions. And we always have a central focus to these conferences, but the pieces that were contributed to the journal didn't just come from people at the conference. Nevertheless, it feels part of a continuing conversation that we're having around conventions. And I asked some people to kick us off this evening. And I asked them to come up with a convention that they have used, an example of this, and to describe how they used it, which in some sense goes against the spirit of the journal and the whole conference, really, because what we've been saying, I think, in our conversations is that conventions should not be seen in isolation. It's not like you do one and then you do another and then you do another and you keep jumping around. They have to be used together in a artistic way. And also one of the things that I think shines out for me really is the Cecily said something at the conference when she said there's a tendency for people to say, let's do a quick tableau. And she said, no, 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 let's do a slow tableau. Let's really slow it down and look at it. Because I think one of the things that drama conventions can do is slow down time so that we really look at something. And so one of the aims really of the conference and the journal article was to look at these articles, was to look at these conventions again and how we use them and how we can continue to use them in a way that is enriching. So I should acknowledge the people who worked on the journal. I was one of the co-editors with Stig and with Will Barlow, and there was also Helen, the editor, the overall editor of the journal, and everybody made an equal contribution, really. So I'm going to go round and ask people to make their contributions. Brian, as you have something of a PowerPoint, would you be willing to start us off?
Sure, if you want me to. Um, so I'm Brian Edmiston, and I'm sitting in the sunshine in Ohio here, and it's the afternoon, so it's nice to see other people from around the world. Um, so I just taking David's request, I pulled up some photographs of some teaching that I did and thought, so what's a couple of conventions I might pull out to talk about. So let me see if this works. Can you see that?
Yeah.
What do you see?
We can see the screen, just the
Oh, wait a
title.
minute. Is the title there? Okay,
Yeah, the title's there.
good. Okay. So of course these are Dorothy's conventions. And I remember when she was working on them when we were in Newcastle. So it's like I remember them, I've sort of been with them for a long, long time. Um, one of the, and of course they've been picked up and used in multiple ways. Tim Taylor has created a really useful list of them with examples and some photographs and so on. So just referring to his guide that's available on the Mantle of the Expert website, which I find very helpful. And he divides them into three sections. He uses Bruner's three modes of representation: inactive, and then iconic, and then symbolic. So the convention 1 is in this first group of 7 there, the representation of people in dramatic situations, inactive. And so that, and number 1 is that, you know, which I remember when I first started using drama, I thought, like many people, this was the only thing there was, which was you're in role, it's as if you're there, and you, it's as if you're in another time and place. So that, of course, is such a useful one when you use it. You know, as you were saying, Cecily was saying, you don't just sort of do it and then move on to something else. But so I used this in preschool. These were with 4-year-olds in our university preschool, and they'd been working on the Three Billy Goats Gruff, and they'd been playing away at this, and I came in and sort of did an extension of it and brought in one of the teachers who was in my class. I took in the whole class. You'll see them in a minute. And she was in role, this is convention 1, as if she was the troll. And I won't show you, but I dramatized the story with our, and retold the story sort of like a postscript, an epilogue to the original one. And the troll falls down the bridge, off the bridge, goes down the river and ends up, and they meet her and they discover that she's scared and she's lost and she wants to go home to her parents. So it's a reframing of the story. So that was really pivotal at the beginning, and the children talked with her, and you know, they met her, and I did other things before that, but that was basically the sort of basic structure there was, and they found out where she lived. And then the question was, should we help her find her way home? So that became the inquiry question that ran for a whole day with these children, even if it's a long way and it might be really difficult. So then that was sort of the framing of the whole thing from the beginning. And they all said yes, except there were some reservations, because we'd played out that we'd use that troll puppet, and that little boy in particular was insistent she was a troll, and you know, her parents were trolls and so on. So but we agreed that we would help her. So that's sort of convention 1 there. So then Tim locates those next ones in Iconic, and I'm going to just look. The first one in that is convention 8, the use of images to represent people, places, or situations, and those images might be lots of things. And so with this, I love using maps. I love creating maps. I love using models. I use this convention probably more than any of the other ones. And as Tim says there, these can be used as a rich source of information for learning, which you'll see coming up, and for creating, I can't read the word, imaginary scenarios, right? So setting up the place, the imaginary place. And I would add on to that, and to create something significant that is other than the students. That's Dorothy's big idea of something other, to focus I keep thinking about this, we're always having dialogue with students to make meaning about whatever we're focused on, whatever the inquiry is. And it needs to be humanizing. And particularly in this case, we're sort of humanizing a troll rather than turning that troll into something to be knocked off the bridge and, you know, and left to the whole drama was about humanizing, if you can humanize a troll, but because but we think, in other words, someone that needed help. So here we go. So you can see on the floor there a bit of fabric, and there were discs we put on that, and we set that up, and the children looked at it as if it was a raging river. And so we imagined the river and what might be in the river and what might be there. But the icon there, that representation was really pivotal. So then the children all imagined that they could cross that river because there were stones that they could step on. And they all loved doing that. And the teachers that were there to help, and they were getting to know the children and holding their hands and helping them across the river. And these are little children. And we all worked together and we got over and we celebrated that. We were all successful. And then there's a mountain. So this was the edge of the that was in the room. And so I just covered it up with some green fabric there, you can see, covered up what was underneath, and introduced that as if it was a mountain. And to show that, we had what this little boy, he volunteered to walk along there, and the other children are waiting. So it wasn't just something to look at, it was something to actually engage with once it was seen as if it was a mountain. And I covered that up in black there because we sort of had to take out what was on there was an icon on the wall, but I didn't want them to really see it because, as you can see, it has these sort of funny trees which didn't quite fit with the mountain. But so just like on the river, now they had the adults put things out and the children loved playing with that as if we were climbing over rocks and other things on the mountain. And again, you know, our friends were there. This is one of the things I wanted to think about. We're always working together. We can always help one another. We can do difficult things together. And we did that. So that was the first thing, second thing. And then the third thing, again, using a bit of fabric put on top of tables. It was to represent a cave. And this was the cave up the mountain where the troll, the baby troll, said that was where she thought her parents were. So I brought in flashlights and wondered if these torches, they might help. And the children thought it was a bit scary and they got under that. And of course they went through it and we did it. We got through. And that was like 2 hours in the morning, all of that. And then we all went outside and came in again after lunch and set the classroom up as if it was the cave inside. And they did a whole other thing of sort of exploring in there. But this was to represent the cave. And some of the children came in earlier and helped set that up as to what it might be. And again, they loved those torches, those flashlights, and they were pretending to look and try and find where the parents were. And we found them. There they were. So that was sort of the end of the story. And we all celebrated. And I just wanted to celebrate children and the amazing power of the conventions. And if you use them within a narrative, within a story, you can go places with children that you can't using just talk and or reading a book or all the other wonderful things you might do. And let's celebrate Dorothy, because without her, none of us would be doing this. So
thank you very much, Brian. Very useful start for us.
You're very welcome. Yeah.
Outlining some of the different conventions, and also really that idea of you can use conventions to create or evoke something that isn't there, that isn't actually there in the room. So you were creating the river, you were creating the mountain. It's simple means to create these things that are absent. And I think Dorothy talks about that. I think she talked about, for example, Brecht with the Caucasian chalk circle, with the scene where Groucho has to cross a bridge. How do you get that onto the stage? So thanks for starting us off there, Brian. Cecily, I know you've got a cold. Are you able to switch your camera on and talk through your example?
Well, I'll give it a try, and my apologies for croaking away like this. And I would like to congratulate Brian in sunny Ohio. That was a wonderful example of serious play. You know what I mean? Kind of involvement, belief, a degree of intensity. And I thought that was a remarkable example. Well, like Brian, I was tremendously struck by seeing Dorothy working in role. And
Cecily, are you able to turn your camera on?
I'd sooner not.
Okay, fine.
That's all right.
That's fine.
Yeah, if you don't mind. But I am not a pretty sight. But I do remember when I started, I thought, oh, this is wonderful. You know, I can begin. And not only am I the teacher, but I'm also the king or the emperor or, you know, the prison guard or whoever. And so I bossed everybody about for quite a long time. And then the kids got sick of that and they got rid of me at some point. And then I thought there must be something more to it than that, and began to work with a little more sensitivity, perhaps. And I still use role quite a lot, and I use it, I think, as a way of establishing attitudes, or sometimes as a provocation. And it continues really to be quite a significant part of my practice. But looking at the rest of the list of conventions, it's not a word I like, but we've accepted it. There are a couple of occasions when I did find useful ways of using, for example, a favorite one, or at least I used it once or twice, was a piece of material with red on it, looking remarkably like blood. So I addressed the group, the class, as if they were police. And I said, it's happened again. And I kind of slightly showed them a little bit of the cloth and then hid it away. I said, you know, we're being attacked in the press, and, you know, our status has shrunk. People believe we're not doing our job. You know, and this is the third time it's happened. I'd showed them a little bit more of the bloody cloak or whatever it was. So that did get us going quite rapidly on a kind of police drama where we were in search of, first of all, of the body and then of the murderer and so on. And it was, I'm not sure I would work with that lack of distance, you know, currently. I think it would be a bit too, I don't know, sort of immediate for me. I've also worked quite a lot with photographs, missing persons, for example, or in fact in Aberdeen. Oh, sorry, I think was it Aberdeen? No, I think it was in Birmingham. I used a photograph of a prehistoric kind of burial mound, which was a kind of circular shape, a very strange image. It was actually of some mounds in County Sligo in Ireland that actually have never been excavated. So we worked on that, and I think actually, I think, Tara, were you there? I believe you might have been. Anyway,
No, unfortunately not. I wish I was.
were you there, Tara? No.
I wasn't, unfortunately not, no.
Well, it was the challenge was who would be brave enough to enter the mound, and the problem was that there was what shall I say, a kind of curse attached to it, that all may enter, some may leave. So that tension was there to begin with, that, you know, you might not get out. And Will Barlow was very much part of it with his students, and they became the kind of, but Will and one of his students became the guardians at the portal to this strange mound. And it was very interesting as people entered, both going in, there was quite a lot of movement in it. And it was, from such an image, I was impressed with the extent with which it became not alive, but it became it had a reality, in a sense, you know, an imaginative reality. It became an elsewhere, which is, I think, what drama is, if you like. So those are just a couple of examples. I'm afraid my voice is running out, but I think so many of those in Dorothy's list, letters I've used, some other examples, but it's been each one of those conventions, I think, can be mined for considerable depth, and I'm looking forward to hear how other people have used them. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecily. Again, that sounds very powerful way of evoking something that isn't there, making it present in our minds and making it loom large in our minds. Theo, I saw you nodding. Were you taking part in that workshop at Aberdeen?
Yes, I remember it. And I remember there was movement and singing, and it had a kind of ritualistic dimension, a bit dreamlike, I think. And yeah, this sense of threat. Yeah, it was brilliant.
I think it's always, I mean, Cecily, you'll always refer to Shakespeare, I know, and it's the power of the conventions within the drama context. Shakespeare's using them as well to create the sort of the dramatic power. And I think I certainly see that in your work.
Yes, Shakespeare's my other teacher, apart from Gavin Bolton and Dorothy, of course. And I think I always say to myself, has Shakespeare done it? And if he hasn't, it's probably not worth doing. And so many of his plays begin with the question, when shall we three meet again? Or at the beginning, I think a masterly thing is the beginning of Hamlet, where in about 5 lines we learn where we are, we learn it's a kingdom, we learn the time of day, we learn that something's going on. We also learn that one of the guards that we never see again is sick at heart. The mastery of compression is extraordinary. And I think, I see Stieg is with us here. I think there are a couple of things that Shakespeare always manages to do, which is that sense of distance, you know, that where we rarely see, well, like the Greeks, we rarely see the nasty stuff. The murder of Duncan is off stage. Of course, in Lear, we do get eyes being plucked out. So he breaks his own rules sometimes. But I think the great themes that Shakespeare tackles are there for us as well. And in fact, family, I'm beginning to realize, is very much a key theme, but it has to be family in a slightly bigger, with a more public context. A sense of whatever is happening in this family is significant to a wider society.
Thank you very much, Cecily, and thank you for struggling through your cold to talk to us. And delighted that you will be at the Dorothy Heathcote Now conference at Goldsmiths in November, leading a workshop, as well as Brian and Diona will be running some workshops. Brian's giving a keynote. So, and one of the contributors to the journal, who's contributed a feature on the ABC of Manfred the Expert, and I was also running some workshops at the conference, Bob Selderslaps. Are you there, Bob?
Yes, hello, everyone. Hello. So yes, I'm a teaching artist in Antwerp in Belgium, and you also asked me to talk about a convention I used. I would like to share some pictures. I'll try to. Oh, I need to give. Oh. I can't seem to share them. Oh, that's a pity. It's oh, or can I? Oh yeah. Do you see a picture with dramatic conventions on it?
We do, yes.
Oh, okay. Then, then I can share it. That's nice. Yes. So I recently started working with Mantle of the Expert in a residential care home with elderly people with physical and cognitive challenges, and but they also often face a lot of obstacles socially. They quite often seem cut off from the outside world and really thrown back on themselves and on their pasts, their memories. They're often asked about their
My name is Luke Jeffrey, and this
like, do you remember when and how was it when you, and it always has to do with their past, it seems. So when I use a dramatic convention, it offers the opportunity to create something new and to use their imagination and make choices and decisions, which also is a power that is often taken away from them as residents of a retirement home. So it's really a way of giving them the opportunity to connect with a world outside, and to create together a view of the possible, as Dorothy Hadgett called it. So I use conventions that help them take that step. So for example, we created an imaginary house together, and I used, inspired by Luke Abbott, a bag of old keys, first to represent the house and its rooms, but later also to help bring its former residents closer. And over several weeks, they created stories together about what they called Villa Agatha. They explored who lived there and how life unfolded for the villa's inhabitants. It involved symbolic, iconic, as well as enactive representations. And at the final session, they all held a key in their hands that they held in front of them to speak from the point of view of a former resident who shared his or her advice on what should happen to the house now in the present day. And then they discussed the various options with the fictional client, the owner of the house, and came to a consensus. So the use of the conventions was manifold, but in the case of the key, it involved an object representing a person or the interests of a person. So that's an example of how I recently am using these the conventions, actually.
That was lovely, Bob. I know that Vishaka put in the chat that she loves this. Yes, very well. You're all three have opened up examples of work which is very different, but all very powerful. You can see the power in them through the use of these conventions to really open up other worlds for people in their imaginations. So Vaishali and Vishaka have written a piece which is about using drama in digital form online. And can I ask you to share an example of a convention now? Vaishali.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Well, I don't have anything to show you, but we went online during the pandemic, as most of us did, and that kind of opened new doors for us. And the article that we have written is completely based on what we practiced and how we failed and how we kind of came up with ideas. And what happened with conventions is that we would we would tap on all the three: iconic, symbolic, and expressive. So we do all three. And the convention that really helped us reach out to children and really create that dramatic world for them was paper location, actually. So paper location really helped us to define an imagined world in their little drawing room or bedroom or study where the children were logging in from. So that is one of the conventions that we would always start with. That was always a starter for us to create a space, and also iconic. So we used a lot of photographs, and especially because we were online, access to photographs and different kinds of photographs at different point in time was very easy. So if I had a turn of event during a lesson, which often would happen, I would always have a photograph to our rescue. So photographs, videos, various clips from YouTube. I mean, we have used everything which was available. And there was nothing that did not help in creating that world and taking the drama forward. So for us, we also used, there's a book that Tim has written recently, the 40 Keys. And in that, there is how you work with a film clip, how you work with, we have done all of that. So our work has been very, very practical, need-based, what was required to build that world and help the children stay in that world without giving too much of dramatic theatrical element in the drama. We did that. So map making, again, I think Brian talked about how he loves map making. I think all of us who work here love map making. So we have used a lot of map making throughout our online sessions. We still do that. And now that we are offline and we are in studio and we are working with children on the floor, in the room, children want to spend a lot of time making maps. And before they reach the drama and the children know that drama is going to happen, the preparation time gets stretched. So when we are saying slowing down time, it actually happens more now because most of our children who are working with us in studio have been with us online. Now, when they come back to the studio and now when they're doing it with everybody in the room, they want to spend more time doing the prep work, doing the incremental tasks before they really reach that first, if I talk about the commission model, then the first commission letter that comes in. So I think we were very lucky to know David in 2020. I mean, I think that opened up this world for us. I don't think I knew, or Vishaka and I knew any one of you before 2020. And I think that made a huge difference in the practice, in our practice, in what we do. And I think Vishaka can also come in with the iconic conventions, or maybe the conventions that she has used and still uses, because Vishaka still continues to do Mantle online with children who are 7 to 12 years of age. So Vishaka, if you would like to say something.
Thank you. Great to see all of you and share our work here. It's a privilege. And yes, to just continue and wrap it up, Mantle of the Expert has been something that we started, like I started doing it online first, and then sort of transitioned to how to do it in person. and using iconic or even inactive conventions never really became a hurdle, because of the transition that we did through teacher in role, and just the way incremental tasks were designed, children were able to understand what is needed to create that expert team. I just shared a little paragraph with Tim as well just last week about our experience with Mantle of the Expert, and the fact that it's so beautifully structured, and the medium never feels like a hurdle. So the online medium was never a hurdle to execute a Mantle of the Expert project. It is only now that, when I'm doing it in person, as Vaishali was saying, getting all the resource done is a big task, because online, we had everything sort of on our fingertips. But yes, convention wise, I would say, as Vaishali mentioned, paper locations or map making is something that we always start with, starting with incomplete documents, starting with a sign, like, for example, how Bob used a key there at the end. We are now planning another process drama to start with a key, which we are sort of still planning around the partition of India and Pakistan. So, which would maybe belong to a house that was, in Pakistan or India, or it was left behind by its inhabitants. But this journey has begun for us, for me at least, from 2020. It's been 4 years. I've been working with Tim's conventions, and now with the book that Tim has come up with, it has really helped us practice. Tim and Viv have come with. It has really helped us practice even teacher narrations and teacher in role, and how to sort of come in and out of that and transition in between. So yes, I would like to just end it with this.
Yes, and we usually play with convention, so we again don't stick to convention and do it as it's written, but we start there, and then it has its own journey that the convention takes to build that word, and we follow that.
Thank you, both of you. Vaishali and Vishaka will also be doing a workshop at the conference. I have put a link to the Eventbrite page where you can find out more about the conference. I've put that in the chat. And I've also put a link to this journal issue. I'm very pleased that it's open access, so you can download all the articles and read them all. And I'm also very pleased at the fact that there's so much of a practical focus. People who are practitioners are writing in this journal, drawing on their practice. And I personally am looking at the moment at how we can reinvent the conventions for online work, because part of me resists this idea, because part of me thinks it's really in the room when you've got people there that can really create what Dorothy called the we-ness, the bonding between people. And it's so much more difficult online. But I do think it's a space we have to occupy as well. We have to be reinventing and using those conventions for the digital age. Just a point about, you mentioned paper location. I'm not sure people may or may not know this term. Paper location was something that was described by Eileen Pennington, which involves drawing something, like it might be an example that I often use is a boiler, a tea urn that you might have in an office, and somebody draws a quick picture of it, writes a note about careful hot, or handle with care, or clean your cups up afterwards, and this is pinned up on the wall and becomes a part of the location of creating the world in the classroom. And I remember that Yona and I once went to Dorothy, and we were talking about the plan that we had for a mantle, and we said, and we thought we'd do paper location. And Dorothy said, "What's that?" And actually, I then found later an account of something that Dorothy did, which was very close to paper location, but she didn't recognize the term herself. We have to say we owe it to Eileen Pennington. So as I say, there's many very stimulating pieces in this journal, a lot of it coming from practice, and some of the people here today have contributed to it, such as Jonathan Jones, David Montgomery, Larry, and Raja is there, and also Theo Breyer's been doing some work on drama conventions in English, and I very much enjoyed a session recently that I was doing with Theo's students in London, which was drawing on text. In this case, it was Dickens, and I'm actually very interested in, because it's not just to me about how drama can be used in English to bring a text to life, but text can form a very interesting basis to develop a convention. And certainly Dorothy did that. And I'd like to open it up at this point to the people here to ask questions, make comments, come up with their own examples of conventions, or talk a little bit about the thing that they've been writing about in the journal. Theo, did you want to come in?
Yeah, it was very nice, that workshop that you did. I suppose, thinking about English, we're thinking about always that things that can happen, you know, with students at their desk, and often it's a shift in their imaginations that will be initiated by, you know, an invitation to wonder or imagine, or the introduction. So those conventions lend themselves very well to the introduction of props or objects or a letter or things that can take the class into an imaginative realm without them necessarily having to get involved in embodying or enacting drama, although obviously I enjoy that as well. But moments, just moments. And what I'm interested in is the ways that you can see the students shift into role through how they are. Even when they're still at their desks, that something happens, something moves, and they begin to kind of enter the text from the inside and immerse themselves in a narrative. But in our workshop, the workshop that David did, it was about Miss Havisham, and the moment when Pip first sees Miss Havisham. We did it at London. We did a similar thing at a London Drama online thing, and it worked online as well. And it was just creating from the text what he sees of Miss Havisham. And we had a few bits of paper and things, and David suggested that they write on bits of paper the significant objects that she has around her that obviously denote her wedding that never happened. So they're so much part of her. And obviously from an English perspective, it's very important that they go back to the text and they check and they look at it in a different way, because it's becoming, you know, it's becoming all around them, as it were. And what I thought was really interesting, we used the convention, which I really like, about a moment of kind of video, a moment where it's just brought to life, a kind of action, and it became really dramatic. So although there was a kind of hush descended, and the student in role just did something very slow and very powerful that really took us into the Miss Havisham world. And I'm interested in what happens when you put a camera on that and when students have control and use that lens, and because it gives them a lot of power, and it is a slowing down mechanism in itself, and it works well online. I like you've done loads of online drama, and actually the power of the camera to do the close-up or just to think and see in different ways. But anyway, David reminded me of, and you really helped, David, you helped to slow everything down, which is something which I never really allow myself to do enough of, because everything's so frantic. We've always got to get through so much. So I really appreciated that. And the point that you said that really brought me back to thinking about Heathcote and conventions was how they bring a person into the room, that they have this quality that is just a presence of someone. And that was really what we felt in that workshop was it last week? Oh, not long ago.
Yeah. Well, we're really talking about sign in all of these conventions, aren't we? Sign for
Yeah.
meaning, sign for significance. When you're looking at a text, you're looking at the very minute details of movement or gesture or the objects. And so that it becomes a constraint, but a powerful constraint of looking at the meaning of every little detail. I should mention that Stig has written about working with the text in the journal, and he's doing a workshop at the conference, which is also looking at a text. But apparently he can't get his microphone to work, so he can't share that with you himself this evening. Jeff, you've been patiently waiting. You've had your hand up.
Oh, thank you. The thing is, with so many minds like this on the Connect, that the ideas move so quickly. Can I just say something about Eileen? Because if you don't know Eileen Pennington's work, if you take something like the Miss Havisham example that Theo's just given, it wouldn't just be simply with Eileen that she would give you the objects that were important to Miss Havisham. The kids would also write about their history, their meaning, their emotion, and they would crystallize that very, very quickly. I think this paper location, it blew my mind. My students, when I was at university in teacher training, they just couldn't get enough of it because drama made so much sense to them. Drama, it didn't have movement. It was static, it was thoughtful, it was reflective. But what I wanted to say, that was you, Theo, you took me off at a tangent. But what I would like to say is, Jonathan Nealon said, conventions are something that children implicitly understand. There's something about a drama convention, which in all the ones that we've talked about, that engages and children are able to engage in almost immediately. And it's even with all the technology that's happening, our legends, our myths, our stories. And I just want to, although we're selecting teacher conventions or conventions that teachers are thinking about very deeply in order to engage with the learning, we should ask children more about conventions. And so often I find myself now saying to and I've given an example of this just recently, how could we do this? How could we make this? It was actually a den of a dragon, a habitat, and the dragon was inside this habitat. And I asked the children, how could we explore this more deeply and find out the needs of the dragon that's inside the creature that's inside the habitat? And they knew implicitly and explicitly, they could tell me how to do it. We used a tambourine as a voice of the dragon, and a little boy who clearly had special needs led the lesson and made the sounds in response to the questions and the queries that the children, or the rest of the class, who endowed him with leadership in this communal artistic experience, it was coming from them. The form was coming from them, which I think is something that sometimes we're at home, aren't we? We're worrying ourselves sick about whether we've got the right symbol, whether we've got the right key to get into the learning. And sometimes the children know really quickly.
No, you're right, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Yes.
Jeff, if I could just add on to that, the example that I gave, I didn't highlight how much the children brought to that. I mean, I gave the basic idea, but they came up with the idea that there'd be things up the mountain that they'd have to go over, and then they brought the other adults in to put their hands out, and they invented what might have been in that river. So they were all pretending to be crocodiles, and had it came from them. As soon as the beginning was there, that they then had 101 ideas, and what you couldn't see there was it was actually all happening concurrently. So it would have looked like a chaos looking in, but it was actually really focused because the children were choosing which they wanted to work on, and they were inventing other things and bringing it in. So it was I'm really glad you said that, because it's like we can and it's having materials that they can work with. So just something as simple, I find, as a cloth and whatever. I mean, if you have musical instruments, they're going to pick them up and work. You don't have to work the whole thing out in advance. So,
Thank you.
yeah, thanks, Jeff. Yeah.
Well, the focus of this year's conference is on agency and empowerment, because I think that is, I've called it the key to her work, because I think there has to be that. There has to be that shift in power, that giving the children agency. And I wrote a piece for the NATD Journal based on a chart that I found in the archive, which is Dorothy's 4 levels of drama work. And I think it really is about shifting to the point where the children, the students, have the power over the conventions, that they know how to use them. That is part of the shift that you're trying to make. And they are using them for themselves to create meaning, to explore meaning. And Vaishali, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thanks, Jeff, for mentioning that. Actually, I mean, we do this a lot because many times we plan our lesson and then we get stuck at a point, and then we don't know how to go forward. And that's when we ask the children, and they always know the answer. They always have a way out. They always know the solution. So, but the beautiful thing is that when we are in drama, what I have started noticing is that children who are 10 and between 9 and 12, they want to, stay in that drama and expand it, stay more and, build the tension of themselves. If you really listen to them, they would like to really stay in the tension, stay in that risk zone. And I think that's amazing to see how children want to go into that full of risk zone and stay there and then play. And I think when the teacher is also at the play mode, conventions, morph into various different forms. I would also like to just add, we use a lot of, because we are on Zoom and we are still on Zoom when we do our classes, we use everything that's available on Zoom technically. So we use whiteboards for all our map making, our collective drawing, collective writing, scribe work for little children. We used renaming ourselves whenever we had to kind of use a different name for ourselves or a place. We also used Spotlight. There's a feature called Spotlight where you can spotlight a couple of people when the scenes are happening. So we used a lot of freeze frames online as well by using the function of Spotlight on Zoom. So I just wanted to add these 3 Zoom conventions.
Thank you, Vaishali. Before we wrap up, can I just invite anyone else who hasn't spoken yet, who'd like to speak about something they've written in the art journal or comment on some of the discussions we've been having?
Can I speak, David?
Yes, Yona.
I've been waving for a little while.
Well, I can't see your physical hand. You have to sort of...
Okay. Oh, well, I'm not technological. But anyway, I was really glad to hear what Jeff said, because that was the question I was going to raise, really, about conventions and who actually introduces them and who manipulates them and how you introduce them. I've said before, there's always a danger, I think, when teachers have a list of conventions that they will follow them through as a sequence or something. There's a danger of that. And I was just thinking about a time when I was working with children in inner city Birmingham primary, and it was about a vicious dog that came into the refuge. And I remember thinking, well, what shall we use to have a convention? And we decided that we'd design how the cage was when he'd left it, and it was like a little ragged doll with a head off, they decided, and all sorts of vicious things. And then we talked about how we could rehabilitate the dog. And I remember saying to them, I wonder how wide his neck is. So when I use my fingers, can you see my hands now? They're not electronic, but they're real, sorry. But I just went to them, stop me when you think we've got to the thickness of his neck. And it was pretty thick, I can tell you. And they all sort of said, stop together, And I thought that was a nice example of them. All right, I knew what I was, I was introducing a convention, if you like. I don't know what it's called. but they were creating the dog in their heads, if that makes sense. So I think it's kind of getting that balance of, when we introduce it, how much of the children are, you know, are going to be in that convention, be part of the convention, create that convention and make it work for them, really. So I think there's always that danger when you look at conventions out of context as well, which is another big danger. So I think the context has to drive the convention, the needs of the children, the needs of the learning, whatever you're wanting to do with those, you use the convention that will drive that. Just like I did with my Port Talbot students who were very vulnerable, they had to have things to look at. So it had to be all the items of the person's life that they investigated, you know. And then, of course, you know, they weren't going to invent that convention. But then from that, you know, from what you hear from them, what they come up with, it helps you with your next convention. And it depends on the experience of the teacher, experience of the class, of course. But I really appreciate what Jeff said. And I know from Brian's work, and it didn't come very clear on that presentation today, but that he gives us such a lot of the ownership of the children, which is great talent, really, at building, you know, the stuff that he does.
Thanks, Yana. I could see a lot of people nodding through that. Roberta.
Just wanted to give a short example because I put on the chat there, and I think Vishaka or Vishali said to speak loud about it, because I've been using conventions online for a long time now to teach Portuguese. I've got a student, she lives in England, and she got Portuguese as a heritage language from her mother. And I've been working with her for 4 years now, and she loves everything that's related to drama. And even if she didn't, I use lots of the conventions to introduce a topic. So we started with an email of I actually found that the present, because I showed it in a Portuguese symposium, how you can use drama to enhance the learning of another language. Not because we all here work a lot with English, but I teaching a different language using the convention is really, really useful. And she's been designing rooms online. She's been doing dressing wardrobes. I taught her about the seasons, so she could go through what she would need. And she got the client who wanted her to design a room for a kid with the spring theme. So we went through what the seasons are, what shall we wear in each season, what would look good in this room. And then online you can find so many things and apps. And then we started looking into a house, what are the spaces of the house, learning all the names of bed, wardrobe, everything in Portuguese. And after doing a real tour in a real apartment and going through all these rooms, she had some ideas, and then she created her online bedroom. And for us, like, she was reading the email, she was writing an email as a response to him using the language she had, her Portuguese, to do it. She recorded videos, she named everything in the room, put some tags on it, and she ended up learning so much from that experience. She went through so many lessons online, and we had a lot of fun. She loved it, and something else followed that because she liked it so much that we kept on other things afterwards. So yeah, the conventions online. She spoke to the real client, because I came to speak to her as the mother of the kid. She also had the letter, you know, all the conventions that were able to fit in. We managed, so it was quite powerful and interesting. And as another example, how they can empower a child to try their best with what they've got. You know, her Portuguese is not wonderful, but she did her best using everything she could and learning things that she needed for to talk to the client and to solve the task she had.
So thank you, Roberta. Roberta and I will be working together doing some workshops at the conference this year. So I'm sorry we haven't heard from everyone. This is such a amazing group of people that we've got together at this meeting tonight. And one of the things that I feel since I had organised the first Dorothy Heathcote Now conference in 2021, I think, there's a feeling of a growing community around the world. People here tonight in India, people in Gaza, people in Belgium and America and all around the world. There's a community building and coming together. So we will have the conference in Goldsmiths, 7th to the 10th of November. There's a possibility that out of that, we'll be working with Chris Lawrence and producing another journal issues of Drama Research magazine this time, with contributions on the question of agency and empowerment. So thank you very much, everyone, for your contributions tonight. And it's just amazingly rich examples, I think, that we've heard tonight of the use of conventions. Dorothy said, I am obsessed with the power of these conventions and in the way they can bring the other into the room. But at the same time, I sympathize with Cecily's position. I think she says in our roundtable discussion, which is also online in the journal, she says, well, maybe we shouldn't always talk about conventions. Maybe you should just say, well, I've got a good idea, because it comes out of the context. It comes out of the drama, really, rather than the other way around, the conventions coming first. So thank you all very much, everyone. Thank you for a lovely evening, everybody who's contributed. And hope to see you soon. Hope to see you at the conference.
Great. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Lovely to see everyone. Thank you
very much.
Thank you and good night.